Becoming a parent, especially if you're the one who is pregnant, is becoming disabled temporarily. And I think that is very, very challenging if you live in a society, which we all do, where being disabled is a worst case scenario for a body.
'Cause it's hard to be a person with a body these days, when bonkers TikTok diets are all the rage. And why are the seats so damn small on the airplane? 'Cause it's hard to be a person with a body these days.
You are listening to Burnt Toast. I'm Virginia Soul-Smith. Today, my conversation is with Jessica Slice. Jessica is a disabled mom and author of the brilliant new book, Unfit Parent: A Disabled Mother Challenges an Inaccessible World. Jessica is also the co-author of Dateable, Swiping Right, Hooking Up, and Settling Down with Chronically Ill and Disabled, and This Is How We Play, as well as the forthcoming This Is How We Talk and We Belong. She has been published in the New York Times, The Washington Post, Alice Wong's best-selling Disability Visibility, and more. As Jessica puts it, she originally wrote this book for disabled parents because their stories are not told or centered. But she very much came to understand that she was writing a book for all parents because the experience of becoming a parent is its own kind of experience with disability. There are so many important intersections between disability justice and fat liberation. One that I think about a lot is how both groups come up against the question, don't we owe it to our kids to be healthy? Jessica's perspective on these issues is expansive, inclusive, and enlightening. I know you will get so much out of this conversation and from reading Unfit Parent. And don't forget that you can take 10% off an order of Unfit Parent or any book we talk about on the podcast if you order it from the Burnt Toast Bookshop along with a copy of Fat Talk. This offer also applies if you previously ordered Fat Talk from us. The Burnt Toast Bookshop is hosted by my local independent bookstore, Split Rock Books, and you can find all the books we talk about on the show by clicking the link in your episode description. Now here's Jessica.
So I am an author and a mom, and this is my Unfit Parent, which is the book we're here to talk about, is my third book, but it's really the book that has my whole heart. And it talks about disabled parenting, which is the thing I care very much about.
I mean, I tore through this book. It was, I don't have my copy handy here, I would show you. It's like dog-eared, like every 3 pages, I think. It's such a rich book. There's so much in here. There's so much for parents of all abilities. It just resonates in so many ways. Let's start by having you talk a little bit about how you define disability, because you have a very expansive definition, and I think more listeners may identify with it than they even realize.
So I have really thought a lot about the best definition for disability. And ultimately, I think everyone is better off if we don't commit to a super firm delineation between disabled and not disabled. Because I think that delineation ends up othering disabled people and further perpetuating stigma. And then I also think it puts a really inappropriate amount of pressure on non-disabled people, that they should be sort of limitless and all-powerful and show no weakness and hyper-independent. And so, yeah, my definition is if you benefit from the disability rights or disability justice movement, then you are disabled. It's pretty easy to take that and say, well, everyone does, because anyone who pushes a stroller benefits from a curb cut, or ramps end up being useful for everyone, or additional time on testing is used for a lot of kids. And like, if you expand it too much, then everyone's included. But I think that's kind of fine. That having gone from someone who was not disabled to pretty disabled, I don't feel threatened by having an inclusive and broad definition.
More people in the club would not be a bad thing. It would actually make it easier to advocate for the changes we need.
Exactly.
I think that's super helpful. And I just want to encourage listeners who are new to conversations about disability rights to kind of keep that broad framing in mind as we go, because I think so often we do really silo off into able-bodied and disabled. So I appreciate you grounding us there. I think it's really important.
Especially for parents, if there's this assumption that they're not disabled, and then therefore parenting shouldn't be hard, or you shouldn't be exhausted, or you shouldn't need help, or you should be able to find the strength within yourself and the willpower to do all you need to do, then I think that really particularly hurts parents.
So, in describing your own journey toward claiming disabled as an identity, which you said wasn't like an overnight process, it took you several years to start using that term. I underlined this part of the book where you wrote, "When my body shifted at 28 from one that could run, work long hours, and travel internationally to one that must mostly rest, I believed that I would go back to my old life once I solved the puzzle of my body. Until the hike in Greece, during which I became disabled, I had the false belief that the life I wanted was a matter of sufficient effort and prudent decision making." And I underlined that because I thought, well, this is also really describing diet culture and an experience a lot of us have had around gaining weight, which is that if we just work hard enough and, have healthy habits and make the right choices, we'll lose the weight, we'll get back to that level of thin privilege we once enjoyed. And I'm just curious if that parallel resonates with you. Maybe it doesn't at all. But if you see this kind of diet culture driven mindset, does that show up elsewhere in our cultural attitudes around disability?
Yes, I very much relate to that and had been following your work and Aubrey Orden's work for a while and other anti-diet activists. And I think so much of the conversation overlaps. It's a myth that there's an ideal body, and pursuing this ideal body ends up hurting especially fat people and especially disabled people, but it hurts everyone to have this like one type of body that we're all trying to get, if that's based on size or ability.
And it just seems like it's a mindset we apply to so many aspects of our life that we think like, well, if I just do everything right, then I'm going to have this outcome. And, I'm going to achieve this goal or this ideal. And so much of life is learning how often that's just not the case.
Yeah, and so I became disabled, as you know, from reading the book very suddenly in one day, but it was the onset of a genetic condition. And in the years prior to being disabled, I exercised every day or, 5 to 7 days a week. I was always trying to optimize my eating. I was like, well, okay, I'll have oatmeal, but then I also need to add chia seeds and then walnuts and then blueberries and then almond butter. Like, how can this be the very best bowl of oatmeal? And then should I add protein powder too? And
oatmeal.
And then lunch, it was like, okay, well, definitely fish. Like I need omega-3 and then fruit and vegetables and then some complex carbs. I was just considering every meal I ate. And then I became disabled. So obviously it didn't insulate me from that.
Right there. That's so fascinating. Yeah, because people think they're making their bodies bulletproof.
Exactly. That it's like someone who ate like that should, have been able to do anything. And then after I became disabled, it took a while to get a diagnosis and then took me years to accept that I was disabled and that I would always be sick. And during that time, I tried any sort of, therapeutic diet that was recommended to me, like cutting out gluten and dairy or much more protein or no sugar or, like suddenly nightshades were the enemy and all these iterations. And as, a hyperachiever, I fully committed to each of these things and then nothing helped. I mean, that's just, it's not going to fix the makeup of my body to do those things. And I've now accepted the way my body is. But it's funny now, I have a real acceptance of my body and a much more distant relationship with the food I eat. And I would say I eat like probably below average. I have a bowl of fiber cereal in the morning and then I need a lot of food each day. So my second breakfast is usually a bagel with butter, cream cheese, bacon on it.
Delicious.
Thank you. I also add cucumber as like a nod to health.
Well, a little crunch. Yeah. A little cooling crunch. I get it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I have on my to-do list every day, eat a vegetable, which if I compare that to the way I was before disabled, and I don't know, this actually feels like a much healthier way to be if you sort of shift the definition of health into humane and without a delusion that my diet will solve everything or really solve anything. Like I kind of just see it as like, all right, I eat as much as I need to give me energy. I mean, I also eat for pleasure, but like my diet has shifted totally since becoming disabled and I like it much better this way.
It sounds like becoming disabled, I don't want to oversimplify, but sort of gave you permission to, prioritize pleasure with food more and just kind of take up more space with it.
Yeah, and also not think about it as this, like, I better not mess this up.
You talked a lot in the book about your struggles with perfectionism. There was a line I loved: becoming disabled dismantled something corrosive about my perfectionism. And I was like, oh, that one resonates.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think diet culture, as you talk about, has so much overlap with health culture, like
Yes.
wellness culture, that you can do one last thing to optimize your life or your mornings or your days or your body. And, wellness culture wasn't in full force because I became disabled in 2011.
Mhm.
And it was like pre-Instagram or very early Instagram, and just something culturally was a little different then. But oh my goodness, if I weren't disabled now, I can only imagine how much I'd be like cold plunging and
Yeah.
everything.
That was like the early days of like Goop and Michael Pollan and that sort of diet culture.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're just like all of that times a million. Yes.
Right, right.
Yes. So, a major arc of the book is your own story of becoming a mom. One piece that I really want to talk about is how your experience of the early weeks of parenting was so much more joyful and less panicked than what many able bodied parents experience, myself very much included. My first daughter was born with a congenital heart condition, so I was plunged
Mm.
into new parenting and into parenting a child with a disability right off the bat in a pretty intense way. And when I was reading your experience, I was thinking, wow, there would have been so many moments of less struggle and less panic if I'd had the kind of preparation you'd had.
Yeah. One, I'm sorry. That sounds like a really hard way to be introduced to parenting.
It was a cold plunge for
Yeah.
sure. She's
Yeah.
amazing, but it was a cold plunge.
Yeah. So that chapter really surprised me. I started writing that chapter and I decided to interview a few disabled and a few non-disabled parents to try to see if there were different trends about the struggles of the first week.
Mhm.
I largely expected disabled parents to describe, more complicated recovery from giving birth and that the difficulties would be maybe heightened because there's just a much greater chance of having the gestational parent, hospitalized after or experience complications. And what I discovered in the first interviews is that every non-disabled person I interviewed spoke to me like becoming a parent was the time they went to war. I mean, it was the most,
Yeah.
like, just so much agony, even from friends I hadn't realized how much agony they had been in. I've thought so much about this, about why this is, but it seems to be almost across the board a uniquely challenging time is when you become a parent. And then when I talked to the disabled people, the first few interviews, they all said, oh, it was fine. It was fine. And then I was like, well, how was your recovery? And one person said, well, I had, preeclampsia after giving birth and they had to do a magnesium and I had really bad side effects and had to keep going to the hospital. Oh, and I had given birth to twins. Oh, and Child Protective Services visited. And they were describing all this stuff and I was like, and that was fine. And they were like, no, it was fine. I knew we'd figure it out. Another disabled person I talked to, she was like, well, I do everything with only my mouth because of my disability. And I had someone coming to help me the first week, but they ended up backing out. So I had to recover from a C-section while caring for a child alone with only the use of my mouth and neck muscles. And she's like, but we figured it out. It was a good bonding time.
I mean, that story, I was like, okay.
And I'm like, what is happening here? And the thing is, it was true for me too. I became a parent and I remember talking to my therapist at the time and I was like, I think something's wrong with me because this is only good. I was like, where's the anxiety? Should I have anxiety? Why don't I have it? Because I'm not a laid back person.
Right.
And I just felt, so preternaturally peaceful. And so then I interviewed more non-disabled people and more disabled people. And the trend continued with one exception. And I ended up, at this point, I've interviewed about 24 in each group. And it's held steady.
Wow.
I've thought a lot about it. And the answer can't be that everyone should just become disabled before having a kid. And it's not like disabled people are better in some core way. And so I've ended up coming down to sort of 3 explanations. One, becoming disabled or being disabled has so much overlap with becoming a parent that there's a skill set that you develop as a disabled person of what is it like to live day to day with a very, very needy body? What is it like to live day in day where body-based problems present themselves completely unpredictably with limited social resources to deal with them? And so there's problem solving and comfort that's inherent with disability. And so when it comes to parenting, the Venn diagram of skills is overlapped.
You talked about like sitting on the floor to make your bottles, or the woman who only used her mouth talked about the system she had in place to be able to make the bottles by the bed. Like the creative problem solving, I was just in awe of it, just absolutely in awe.
Yeah. So, Dr. Erin, who you were talking about, she had gone to California, gotten her PhD, become a tenured professor, all with her disability. And so she had been practicing these, incredible creative innovations for decades. And so when it came to parenting, she wasn't like, oh no, how do I use this body for the first time? She's been doing it for a long time in many contexts. And so that's one part. But then the other part is that I think becoming a parent, especially if you're the one who is pregnant, is becoming disabled temporarily. And I think that is very, very challenging if you live in a society, which we all do, where being disabled is a worst case scenario for a body. We are told that it is better to be dead than disabled. It's understandable that someone might want to be dead instead of disabled. We're reminded constantly that health is the ideal and falling away from health is to be avoided at all cost. And recovering from giving birth, I think, is a lot like becoming disabled. And I think suddenly someone is living in a body that's not safe in our world.
Yeah.
And that touches on something so primal. It's like, how can I possibly survive with this new kind of body? And then I think babies are like the ultimate disabled person.
Yes.
Because they're so erratic and so needy. We had a baby about a year ago, and I was noticing his breathing at the beginning. It was just like sometimes fast and sometimes slow, and then sometimes he would not breathe for a bit. And I was having to pay attention to every sip of his bottle he took. It's like you have this heightened attention to the way a body is working and the fragility of that tiny little body. And it's like, oh my God, we're all just fragile bodies and we could die. And I think if you are not disabled and aren't having to confront our shared fragility on a regular basis, then that introduction to it is absolutely terrifying and destabilizing and harrowing.
It's that same thing we were just talking about of like, not only is an able-bodied parent experiencing disability for the first time, they're experiencing it with the expectation that it has to be as temporary as possible and that they have to get back to, quote, normal as fast as possible. Like there's so much pressure on us to get back to work as quickly as possible, to, lose the baby weight, to start having sex with your husband again as soon as possible. This expectation of return to previous levels of whatever is just bananas given what you're actually going through. Whereas it sounds like for you and for the folks you were interviewing, there is this understanding of like, yes, it's chaos. We're just going to roll with this. We're not trying to claw our way back to something.
Right. And, for those of us who've been able to accept being disabled, which isn't everyone, but it's a lot of people, not returning to normal or having a changed physical experience, I think, isn't as scary. Like we've done it. We're more acquainted with physical suffering and chronic physical suffering. There are these two studies. One of them I only learned about after finishing the book when I interviewed a UCLA doctor who works with a lot of disabled pregnant people. And she was doing a study on recovery. And she had a disabled population and a non-disabled population and recovery from labor and delivery. And she found that the rates of postpartum depression were much higher in the non-disabled group. So my interviews in my system are obviously not remotely scientific. I had no IRB approval. It was all like snowball method of interviewing.
Sure.
But her study does reflect it. And then there's a Harvard study that Dr. Lisa Izzoni, who found that disabled people are checked for cancer less than non-disabled people because it's assumed that why bother treating us if we're already disabled? But disabled people handle cancer better than non-disabled people. Like we navigate the medical system and handle the emotional fallout from cancer better. And so she's done this study, I guess, to try to convince doctors to treat disabled people for cancer, which is obviously depressing.
Yes. Look, they'll do a good job with it. You should treat them. Also,
Yeah,
it's your job.
They deserve to know.
Could you just do your job? Thanks. But okay.
Yeah.
Another piece of this is we're talking about all the pressure that parents are under around performing able-bodiedness in whatever way they feel like they have to. There's another layer to this conversation I want us to dig into, because something I frequently hear from parents, especially moms who are struggling with whether to pursue intentional weight loss. Maybe a doctor has told them they need to lose weight, or again, it's that get your pre-baby body back pressure. I'll often hear rhetoric like, well, I owe it to my kids to be healthy, or I just want to be able to run and play with my kids. And I often struggle to explain why maybe that shouldn't be the goal. It feels to me very much in line with that thing that people will often say about like, well, as long as the baby is healthy, that's all that matters when you're pregnant. And as the parent of a kid who was not healthy when she was born, that fills me with a lot of rage.
Yeah.
So I would love us to talk about this idea of owing health or just wanting to be healthy, and why that is held up as like this, oh, of course you feel that way. Everybody feels that way. But it's actually quite problematic.
Before I answer, do you, and maybe you've talked about this and I've missed it, but do you feel like a fear of fatness is a fear of mortality? Do you think those are bound up together?
I do, yes, especially because of the way we pathologize fatness in our medical system. So I think a lot of people experience a lot of fear-mongering around that from doctors, for sure.
I think if you focus on thinness as the goal, you're kind of secretly acting like if you can get thin, then you will never die. I think people kind of convince themselves that it's not a matter of degrees, even if you give them that is true, which obviously I don't. But the fact is there's nothing we can do about our bodies being mortal. So this thing, there's, all that matters is the baby's health. One, it's a lot of pressure on a parent and on a baby because 20% of people are disabled. So it kind of sounds like they've all fucked up. So one, it makes people seem like failures. And two, no physical body is ideal. No one actually measures up. Every person, everybody has lots of needs and lots of limitations. So one thing that we have done with our second kid is our first kid had some asynchronous development. And we found that milestone tracking brought us like some heartache or some worry. And so with our second kid, we've actually totally ignored milestones. Like, we don't have anything tracking milestones. And I think because we're older and very tired, we don't remember when anything should happen.
Yes. That is such a gift of second child parenting.
Yeah. But it's been so funny because we think our baby is hilarious now because we don't know when anything's supposed to happen. So one example is he started to take things out of a container, like any container, with a lot of intensity, and then he would put things back in the container with the same intensity. And so we started calling him like our little businessman, or he has to go to work. And we were like, wow, he's so organized. I guess he'll be organized forever. And then we went to our 1-year-old checkup. And the doctor said, okay, and now has he taken things out of a container and put things back? And we were like, oh, this is just a milestone.
Well, this is the thing babies do. Okay. We thought it was his personality.
Yeah, we just like fully pathologized his organization. I think this is kind of wrapped up in the question because I feel like in this one way we've let go of all that matters is his health. We're just like, who are you, little guy? And maybe it makes us slightly delusional, but it's also much more fun to live this way. And he's going to do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And I think if he needs additional support, we'll know. Yeah. I mean, we're paying attention. We're with him.
Yeah.
And we'll get it. I kind of wish we collectively could do that with more parts of our bodies. We could accept them for how they are and seek support, seek to alleviate suffering, not give up on ourselves, but not try to shoehorn them into a completely unattainable ideal. So Another thing I've been thinking about with this is before I knew that I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I have a connective tissue disorder that causes a great deal of chronic pain. And it caused a secondary neurological condition in 2011. But before that point, I was in daily pain from the time I can remember knowing my body, like my back and my neck and my arms and my legs and my hips. And I thought everyone else lived like that, and they were just a lot more chill than I was about it. And I also thought I could do something to make my body stop hurting. I thought I just bought the wrong car, so I kept switching cars. I thought I needed a new mattress, so I kept switching mattresses. I tried acupuncture. I did massage therapy. I thought I was like one decision or one action away from not living in a body that hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I found out I have this genetic condition that will cause pain the rest of my life, I first grieved, but it is much better to give up on thinking I can escape this pain.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean I don't try to ease my own suffering. Like I have a heat pack on my back right now as we talk, and I have ice packs on my back as we talk. And I did switch mattresses last year because my old one was causing pain and I could afford to switch mattresses, and the new one is better. So I still care for my body, but I'm not trying to fix it. I'm trying to just care for my body that will hurt every day of my life.
That is such a helpful distinction, caring for your body versus fixing it. And also this idea of alleviating suffering versus having a moral obligation or a responsibility to others to achieve health. I mean, when people say like, well, I owe it to my kids to be healthy, like it's this idea that somehow I'll be a less capable mother or a less capable parent if I can't get my cholesterol down or, you know, if my diabetes isn't managed or whatever it is.
I mean, I think we're kind of bad at knowing what will make us a good parent, right? I'm a very good parent and I do almost nothing. Like I'm in bed or my wheelchair all of the time, but I'm a very involved parent. I'm a really patient parent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to be with my kids and tolerate the boredom of children because I tolerate the boredom of a like disabled life. Like I've been practicing being bored for so long that I can.
God, that sounds useful.
Yeah. And kids are so supremely boring.
Yeah.
And I'm really good at that now. And I don't know. I just think we're kind of bad at knowing what will make a good parent. You know, people are like, well, I just need to run with my children. They always use that example. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, do you? I ride with my children on my lap on my wheelchair, and they really like that too.
Fat moms will often say like, well, I can't use the playground equipment. And it's like, well, why aren't we building playground equipment that are, you know, like, it's fine. You can't sit on a child's swing. Like, do you need to? Like, I don't want to.
Well, and what narrow view of good parenting if you have to be able to sit on a swing to be a good parent?
Yes. But I think, again, it just ties back to everything we've been talking about, this pressure that's on us, this way that health is a performance. And you've touched on this a little bit, but we'll just maybe take it one beat further to help people distill it more. Like, okay, I want to unpack my ableism, but I'm still going to vaccinate my kids. Or like you said yourself, you have a daily goal to eat a vegetable. There's still things we do that are health-oriented or health-promoting behaviors, even if we're trying to let go of the idea that we are obligated to be healthy or that healthy is better.
Yeah, and what will it achieve us?
Yeah.
I think keeping like a steady stream of produce in my body is probably going to ease my suffering. I think it is like a thing I want to do. And I think it's a really kind of achievable goal.
Most days, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Just the cucumbers and the bagels. I've done it, actually.
You have done it. You've achieved it.
Yeah. I think if we keep our expectations reasonable about what we will get about those choices that care for ourselves, like that's more sustainable and kinder and healthier too.
And something like vaccines obviously alleviates suffering.
Obviously. And it's social responsibility. We're very pro-vaccine because it alleviates our suffering and the suffering of other people.
I really loved the scene at the end at your daughter's birthday party where you talked about when she needed a break from the party and she had the little ET finger signal and that you could just, you know, roll away with her on your chair and give her this break. That level of attuned, present parenting is something that I think a lot of us are striving for on our best day. So it's really inspiring and fun to read about the way
Thanks.
you are able to create those moments of connection.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Anything else about the book we didn't touch on that you want to make sure we get to before we wrap up?
I wrote this book initially for disabled parents because we're so excluded from conversations, and I wanted there to be a place where we're talked about and celebrated. But in writing it, I became convinced that I think it's a book that all parents would really get something from. I think assuming that disabled experiences and disabled wisdom is worth talking about, even if you're not disabled, is a great idea. Not just you should buy my book, but I really think like we shouldn't have this assumption that we should ignore disabled things. Like, one, the line between disabled and not is pretty thin. And two, as long as you don't die very suddenly at some point, everyone does become disabled. And so it's a topic worth considering for all bodies and minds.
I'll also add, like, for anyone who's parenting kids with disabilities or neurodivergent kids, or just, like, most of our families do not match this ideal health performance type of nuclear family that we're sold. And there's so much to learn from folks who have had these different experiences and found different ways through. And I think the disability piece of it is just a huge, huge part of the conversation. All right, so we wrap every episode with butter, which is our recommendation segment. So Jessica, do you have any butter for us today?
So you had told me that ahead of time, and I was positive that I was going to say these new Birkenstocks I bought.
I mean, I love that.
They're called Reykjavik, and the thing I love about them is they have so much rubber on the sole, and it makes absolutely no sense because the top of them has like normal holes and is suede.
Oh, they're
and so
cute.
It's like, oh, you looked them up. Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you for saying they're cute. My whole family thinks they're like horrifying. And
they're ugly cute the way Birkenstocks are ugly cute. And I will admit they've leveled up from the basic Birkenstock. But I think they're pretty cool. I mean, I like a ugly clunky shoe. I think that's cool.
We were trying to discuss what situation you would need that much rubber on the bottom, but really no protection on the top.
Yes, it is decorative rubber at best.
And then my husband was like, and you're in a wheelchair. Like, there's zero situation that you would need these shoes. But then can I say one more? Because I got his permission.
Definitely.
Okay, this morning I was like, oh, I want to say this one. My husband grew up in Manhattan, then lived in Brooklyn, then we met in San Francisco. He's this like erudite philosophy major. Literally, while he was cooking dinner yesterday, he was reading a history of Western philosophy.
Wow. Okay.
He's just this man. And then inexplicably, he has become completely obsessed with the 2021 Matilda, the musical.
Oh, it's so good.
And, he's obsessed. He listens to it on his headphones nonstop. Last night, like before we did anything else, he's like, can we just sit together and watch a YouTube video of the song Naughty? And then he's like, tearing up watching Naughty.
It's so good. This is the one with Emma Thompson as the Trunchbull, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'll tell him you said that.
Oh.
And so I just am delighted that my butter is my husband liking Matilda very, very, very much.
It's such a good production, and it has been very popular in my house with my kids. We actually saw the theater version of it when we were in London last summer, which was delightful because I mean, man, those little British kids can dance. It was such a good performance. So it's great on stage or as the movie. We're obsessed with the soundtrack. We play it all the time. And I will also say, because on Burnt Toast, we do track for examples of like fat stereotypes. I do think that the way the Miss Trunchbull character is written in the book, there's a lot of fat phobia in Roald Dahl books in general and a lot of other problematic content.
Yeah, a lot of.
I mean, he was not a great person.
No.
So you have to take that, factor that in. But the movie version, like, I loved Emma Thompson's performance of it. And they did pat her, but I wouldn't say it's a fat suit. I would say it's more like they're making her like big and muscular. And then the scene where Bruce has to eat the chocolate cake, like all the kids are cheering for him. And you can read it as a very empowering, like, look at this kid who can eat a whole cake to stand up to the bully. Like, I found it a very empowering pro-cake scene. It is not always played that way, but in the movie, I think it is. So.
Oh, Well, even better.
My kids and I had a whole conversation about it, and we decided that it's a cake positive, body positive interpretation of the text.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Oh, this was so much fun. Thank you, Jessica, for taking the time with us. I really appreciate it. Tell folks where they can find you and how we can support your work.
So you can buy Unfit Parent anywhere you buy books. And there are also links on my website, jessicaslice.com. And I'm on Instagram, Jessica Slice. I have a Substack where I send monthly notes about disabled parenting and then usually try to get people to read whatever poem I'm fixated on that month.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for listening to Burnt Toast. If you'd like to support the show, please subscribe for free in your podcast player and tell a friend about this episode. It's a great one to share with a fellow parent friend. And leave us a rating or review. All of this goes a long way towards helping more folks find the show so we can grow. You can also consider a paid subscription to the Burnt Toast newsletter. It starts at just $7 a month. It gets you behind paywalls, gets you tons of other great perks, and it keeps Burnt Toast an ad and sponsor-free space. Click on the link in your episode description or go to virginiasoulsmith.substack.com to join us. The Burnt Toast podcast is produced and hosted by me, Virginia Soulsmith, and Corinne Fay. You can follow me on Instagram at v_Soulsmith. You can follow Corinne at SellTrade Plus, an Instagram account where you can buy and sell plus-size clothing. And subscribe to Corinne's newsletter, Big Undies, at bigundies.substack.com. The Burnt Toast logo is by Deanna Lowe. Our theme music is by Faraday, and Tommy Heron is our audio engineer. Thanks for listening and supporting anti-diet, body liberation journalism.